All right, we're here with Greg Powers, the Next Level Athlete. And with you, we like to talk recruiting because you're a recruiting guy.
Wizard.
And I want to talk a little bit about the recruiting calendar because it gets very, I don't want to say murky, but it certainly gets a little jumbled over the course of the season, and especially when you factor in other things that haven't existed except for the past few years, most notably the transfer portal. And I want to give you two quotes. One of them is from Greg Sankey. Greg Sankey, of course, is the SEC commissioner, an extremely powerful man within college football. He said, quote, he said that he wants to end the early signing period. He wants to get rid of it altogether. Of course, the early signing period started December 22nd. I believe it was 21st.
Yeah, 21st,
23rd, 22nd.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that is when the first time that FBS players or teams could sign with Division I college football teams is in starting then. Of course, there is the normal National Signing Day, which is in February as well, but we all kind of agree that right now the early signing period is when 90+% of the prospects, at least that are going to FBS ranks, go there. His quote that he gave to Nicole Auerbach of the Athletic said, quote, "We're crushing coaches in December," he said Saturday in a wide-ranging conversation. "We're going to add playoff games in December. We have to change early signing. We've created more pressure for young people. There was a notion that we need these long windows to alleviate the pressure. I think we created pressure for young people. We have to change December and college football to support the health of our participants and our leaders and to conduct the games." End quote. That runs in contrast to a quote that we got from Todd Berry, who's the executive director of the American Football Coaches Association, the AFCA, which had their big conference in Charlotte, I want to say this week. Whereas he said that he wants to move the early signing period up before the transfer portal open. Perhaps even, he told Adam Rittenberg of the ESPN, perhaps the first Wednesday in December or right after Thanksgiving. The quote from Todd Berry, quote, "It is so chaotic right now," end quote. So these are obviously two different views of the same topic. I think they both get to the same reasonable problem, which is in college football, December is nuts for college football teams.
And it's going to get worse.
And it's going to get worse because right now as it exists, you've got, let's just lump in conference championship games, right? Your conference championship games. The transfer portal opens up on December 5th. That we'll use 2022 days. It opened up on December 5th. You've got all the bowl games going on. You then have early signing period starting December 21st. You're going to add in playoff games for these teams. They're going to add playoff games. There is this crush of things that happen on the college football calendar in December. So my question to you, Greg Powers, is what do we do? How do we because it is nonstop for these college football coaches. How do we alleviate that in that December crunch with all the things that are going on?
I'm going to propose an alternate reality.
We call it the Powers Plan.
This is the Powers Plan.
Back to the Powers Zone we go. R.I.P.
Maybe we can bring that back. I like this idea. Okay. What if there was a world where you could sign your letter of intent whenever you wanted? What if there was no signing period? What if you've made a commitment and you decided that on June, that's when I found the school I'm going to, and I'm going to sign my letter of intent, and it takes the pressure off of everybody all the time.
So in many ways, what you're doing is you're getting rid of the verbal commitment.
Yeah, you just get rid of it.
You can theoretically still
You could verbal commit, but I mean, if you found the place that you want to go, you're comfortable with it, you could sign. Contingency, you can get out of your letter of intent during the signing period of January 1 when the dead period ends to February if you wanted to change your mind.
So you're basically taking what's there and flipping it completely upside down.
If there's been a coaching change or some such.
Yeah,
like just not like you just can't get out of it. You just can't sign. And here's why I like this. I'm putting this hand in hand with NIL.
Hmm?
You can't get an NIL deal unless you're signed.
I like that.
You
I
can get an
agree with
NIL deal if you've signed with someone, and that's what allows you to market yourself and be marketed to companies so that companies can't take advantage of you and schools can't take advantage of you. You can sign anytime you want. After you've signed, you can negotiate an NIL deal.
So, yeah, because to me the devil's advocate, I don't hate that plan. I want to be clear. I think that's a pretty decent solution. Let me play devil's advocate.
Okay?
Let's say that I decide to sign with. Let's say I signed with North Texas.
Okay?
Right? I signed with North Texas in September because I really liked what North Texas had going. Well, now all of a sudden, I didn't sign up for Eric Morris. You know what I mean? I didn't sign up for that. I would want my request, and I've thought of this for a while, not just because of your plan.
Right.
There needs to be a carve out to get out of your letter of intent on the basis of, in my opinion, a coaching change. There are also, I mean, I look back on, and this is a terrible memory, but the Baylor scandal. You remember
Okay.
when the Baylor scandal went down? Of course, Art Briles was fired in May. They had the entire, I guess it was 2016 class
Right.
together, already put together. And,
Devin Duvernay, I think, was a part of that.
right, Jarrett Stidham was.
Yeah.
Right? And my thought, I remember coming on the air on this very program and saying, you've got to let all of them out of their
Sure.
letter of intent. Like there's no way you can hold on to them. But ultimately, it ended up coming down, and credit to Baylor, they did the right thing. They agreed to release anybody from their letter of intent who wanted to. I think that there should be some escape hatches, so to speak, some escape clauses for these teams. Now, I think you need to limit it because because a letter of intent needs to mean something.
Right.
But I think in the case of a head coach, or maybe if you want to list one other assistant, that if they leave, you are able to get out of your thing. Like the guy who recruited you. Or your
I don't
position.
know if I like the assistant
Oh, yeah?
thing. You know, I don't feel like you should. I get the head coach thing.
Mhm.
And I know a lot of players carve out a solid relationship with their assistant coach, you know, who might be coaching their position. But those guys aren't around. There's a lot of coaching changes. Is it fair to the
Mhm.
guy who just signed at Texas Tech now that Emmett Jones is gone? There's not going to be a lot of
Yeah.
fans clamoring for those guys to be let out of their letter of intent.
That's true. That's
right?
fair.
You know, I get the coaching thing, and there are some contingencies there already from the NCAA. Like if there's a coaching change, you can take another official visit to that school to make sure that you like the new coach, or
Mhm.
you know. But ultimately, it's a decision that you, your family, or those close to you, your coaches, whoever, are going to make, whether you want to sign or not. You don't have to sign in June.
Mhm.
You don't have to sign in February. You could sign in
You can sign in
November or December, just like the guys are now. That's up to you.
You could sign in July.
And it puts a little
You
bit
know,
more
July heading into your freshman season.
Well, it puts
if you
more
want to.
control in the hands of the college coaches too. If they're coming to their players and saying, their recruits saying, we want to have this thing wrapped up by July before the season.
Mhm.
We want to have it 75 to 80% done. Are you in or are you out? That's up to them too.
Yeah.
You know, I just think it gives more. I like it because it gives more control, and I think having here's a misconception with recruiting: you don't have to sign.
Yeah.
You don't have to sign anything. I mean, signing is just like a formality.
Signing is.
You don't think A&M's going to take DJ Hicks if he didn't sign? They're
Yeah.
going to be like, "Come on, let's
Yeah.
go." You know, so the signing thing is just like for show. I guess.
It's for the NCAA clearinghouse basically. That it's the paperwork that they send over there, but like it doesn't impact your scholarship
Right.
theoretically. Like that's not a scholarship.
You
Like
could just show up on campus.
yeah, and then be like, hey, like you could just be a verbal commit the entire time, and then just show up and sign your scholarship paperwork and never submit one to the NCAA clearinghouse. I suppose. Yeah, you could.
Yeah.
Do
So-
you think
Because you'd just be a walk-on theoretically.
if you technically opened it up like that, do you think that would have an effect on it? Like, I go back to college. In high school, you had to sit in an assigned seat. They told you, like, this is your assigned seat. You're going to sit there. You get to college, and you're like, oh, I can sit wherever. And everyone inevitably ends up sitting in their same seat every time you go to college. Like, that's just how it works. Do you think that same thing would happen there? Of if you open it up to year round, that everyone would still kind of be like, oh, well, maybe there's a rush to get there, or a rush, not that almost everyone would do it at the same time, just without the rules of it having to be that way?
That's a great point. And one of the things that I would wonder,
because people copy people.
Because you hear all the time now about the challenges of roster management in college football.
Right.
I think I saw this the other day. Western Michigan hired a general manager for their college football team. Right. So like in the same way that like the Reds have a GM who makes the roster decisions, he's the GM for Western Michigan. Because with the portal and with signing or recruiting,
it's just changed a lot.
It's just changed so much. The transfer portal. The one thing that would be a little interesting is that it would make roster management perhaps even more of a moving target than for these college football programs.
And I mean, dare I say that the general manager thing might be commonplace?
I think it's the new.
You know what I mean? Like these are. It's not like these are professional teams.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The kids are. Some of them are making great money. Some of them are trying to make like this is a professional league now. Mm-hmm. It's not exactly the way it wasn't. And as a matter of fact, like the way that I think about recruiting and covering recruiting is changing. Right, like a lot of the more interesting stories that aren't being told are probably like NIL stories. Mm-hmm. But why are those taboo to talk about? You know, I don't understand that whatsoever. I do know that we have some limitations as how we cover it specifically in Texas because these kids can't get NIL deals until they get to college. That's not the way it is in other states. But if I'm a company that's signing a recruit to an NIL deal, I want them to talk about my company. Is that not the reason why I'm signing them to the deal in the first place? Mm-hmm. If that's not the reason why that they're being signed to this deal, what is the reason, which I think is more nefarious in a lot of instances? Yeah. Right? I want you to come to Clemson. Mm-hmm. I want you to, so I'm going to give you a great NIL deal.
Here's the other thing about, and I'll close with this final point, and then I want to give you a chance to finish it off. Another thing that I think is problematic about college football the way it operates right now is that with all of these things there in December, it's hard to focus on any one of them, right? I use the example of the NFL. The NFL has been supremely impressive at making it a 365 league. That's a 12-month league. Even though the games are only played in 5 of them, 6 of them maybe, 5 of them, it is something that the calendar runs all year long, right? You've got, of course, the season, right? As soon as the season wraps up, you're talking about draft, right? They've made the schedule release a big deal.
Yep.
Right? They've got combine, like everything. Then before that, it's mini camp and things like that. They have done I think better than any league in the world. They have structured their calendar to make sure there's something to talk about your league year round, right? College football doesn't do that. College football, kind of signing day rolls around, and then there's a lull, and then there's spring football, and then there's the summer. And
is that by design for other college? I think there's some other aspects to take under consideration, too, when talking, like, deeper, right? Mm-hmm. There are other college sports that Baylor wants you to concentrate on, right? Like, Baylor's not
theoretically
just a football school. They do a lot of others. I mean, I think they're really great at gymnastics, for example. Mm-hmm. Volleyball is really good at. Yeah,
is it like acrobatics and tumbling or something like that? They're like one of the best.
So I mean,
OU is.
Yeah,
OU's
really
gymnastics program's like the best in the nation.
Mm-hmm. Those sports do want you to concentrate on their sports as well. So I think there's some different aspects as it relates to college, but I kind of even like what you just said now. Like, could there be a, for lack of a better term, like a free agent window that you could sign in college? I'm not proposing what I'm saying is like the exact answer, but I think this. I say this from a professional standpoint too, where I cover recruiting, right? Like, I think if you could sign at any time, or you could sign within a more extended window, that doesn't make recruiting less interesting. I think it makes it more interesting.
Oh, I think it makes it absolutely more interesting.
So job stability, great, check for me, right? Like that's good because you would worry about some of these changes, right? But I think it takes the pressure off of the coaches. They don't have to cram everything into a window. I think it takes the pressure off of the recruits a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to worry about that. You kind of see where these guys stand.
You don't have to
Let's break it to the fans. These kids know where they're going. You know what I mean? Like
I would say 2% of them have honest to God changes of heart. Like in
recruiting battles. They're recruiting battles. True recruiting
Yes.
battles.
But that's like very clearly the outlier.
Right.
90 to 95% of them know where they're going
Unless something changes.
unless something changes, like NIL.
Yeah.
Right. And so that is, I think that it could be better for everybody if we can find a way to spread this out a little bit more, and because it would take pressure off coaches. Coaches, I mean, these guys, I don't feel. Look, I'm not here to tell you like boo-hoo for Jimbo Fisher, right? Because he's making a lot of money, right? But these guys' lives are consumed. They basically, the kind of joke is that they basically get 1 week a year, and it is 4th of July weekend. Every college coach goes to their beach house in Destin, for the entire year. Like that's the 1 week they get off, because every time else you're on the recruiting trail,
right?
Stuff like that. That would be a way of, I think, managing the workload a little bit. And I'm not here to tell you that this is why it happened, but I wonder if the death of Mike Leach is a wake-up call for some people. That is, if you're burning the candle at both ends, I mean, you talk about serious health implications.
Right.
Like
you only get one life.
That's absolutely right.
And I think one thing that we'll both, I agree that I'm not a huge fan of the early signing period. I like the more traditional signing period better. It came at a better time of the year for everyone, I think.
Yeah,
you do have to you would have to transition from the end of the season into recruiting. It was the same for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody had a transition.
Everybody made the move, yeah.
Right? And the early signing period, I just don't think it's fair. Even if you're only talking about 8 teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
8 teams play in the playoff, the conference championship games. There's more than that, I think.
Yes.
But just use 8 as an example, 8 to 10.
Yeah.
Those teams can't start recruiting until their season is over. So while all the other teams are out on the recruiting trail for that week while they're preparing, you're punished for playing in a championship game.
Yeah.
And I don't think, why would you even have a rule that's not fair? So there were just like things about it that I don't understand, but there are a lot of things about NCAA that is perplexing. Is perplexing.
There's a larger conversation as to whether or not college football should operate under the purview of the NCAA. That's probably the time for probably another conversation. But it is interesting, and I think you saw we started this by talking about those kind of disparate views from Greg Sankey, of the SEC, as well as the gentleman, Todd Berry, the head of the AFCA. I think they're both trying to solve the same problem. Right. They're both trying to solve the same problem, which is college football in December, basically, and in certain times of the year, it's unsustainable. Like that type of workload and that type of so much pressure is put on that time of year. They're just obviously coming about it different views, and you kind of went with a third way, which I think is also it's
just the way I've been thinking. You know what I mean? It was just the way I've been thinking about it. I'm not even opposed to saying like you could sign in the spring to summer, right? Or you could sign December to February.
I do think that, and to close this out, I do think that there is value in having portal windows, like as far as like what they exist now, like you can enter from now to now, you can enter from so and so to so and so dates, because you do need to have some sort of roster stability there for certain times of the college football season.
Portal is wild. The portal is wild.
The portal is a game changer.
The portal's, even from kids that are like kids are on the road traveling to see these schools like for a week, and then like boom, this is where I'm going to go. It's a wild thing, man. Like that would be a great behind the scenes story, is to go with someone like on their
portal visit,
their portal visits. Like where did you go? Like, I went to Boston College, and then I went to Utah, and then I went down to USF. So it'd be wild to follow that.
Anyway, there's some talk about what the recruiting calendar should look like. There we go. Let's go over to Ashley Pickle for America's second favorite segment. Final thoughts.
We did have a question about that. It was, if no early signing period, how would you handle early enrollment? December early signing period helps those not so top 5, 4, or 3 stars because most of them will sign early, giving schools a better idea of where the big guys go.
And I think that that's a great question, and I think that your solution, which is sign anytime, solves that. Which is, if you're Arch Manning committed when we were at 7-on-7. He committed in late June. If he wants to sign right then, he can enroll on January 1 or January.
And then he can negotiate a fat NIL deal.
Right.
And until then, you can't. You know, that's what I just like to put some rules around it. But to answer that question more with facts, I guess, there's always been early enrollees even during when there was no early signing period. You could still be an early enrollee, and that kind of goes back to the thing of that you don't have to sign a letter of intent to go to college, right? You could be a commitment, and if you were graduated, I think the rule is if you're graduated from high school or had the credits to go into college, that you could sign your letter of intent early, kind of like it is now. I think that's kind of what they maybe built the early signing period kind of around, is that you could sign then and then still be an early enrollee. So, I mean, the letter of intent doesn't. Yeah, you can enroll whenever. You know, you could go to college. You know, Quinn Ewers went to college a whole year early.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for watching this clip here on YouTube. If you like this kind of stuff and you want more of it, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And remember, you can watch us live every weekday at noon at TexasFootball.com, Facebook, Twitch, or here on YouTube. And if you want more of the best coverage of football in the state of Texas, check out TexasFootball.com and become a Dave Campbell's Texas Football Insider at TexasFootball.com/subscribe.